Finding innovative model for transmissions. First of all, already the title invites us to consider something. If we have to look for innovative models, this means that the models that we have now don't work, question mark. Sometimes they do, sometimes less, sometimes they seem to be a little outdated, sometimes they are maybe not entirely well known. So the goal of this panel is also to see if we really have to find innovative models or if we can integrate, if we can exchange something about the models that we already have. I will just take 3 minutes of your time to describe what we have been doing in Italy recently, and I take advantage also of the presence of our friends in Florence that have participated in this. The Cologni Foundation for many years has been financing remunerated apprenticeships for young artisans. That is to say that we work together with the best Italian schools of arts and crafts. We ask the schools to tell us who are their best school leavers, and we select them. And for 6 months, we pay their salary so that they can work side by side, hand in hand, with an acknowledged master craftsman. We follow them carefully. So every week we check, do they come, do they work, are they followed properly, do they eat fruit? I mean, we try to make sure that everything goes properly. It took us, anyway, a few years to fine-tune, to understand how this model could really work and could be really innovative. First of all, and the first lesson that we learned was that the apprentice and the master, they had to know each other before the apprenticeship started, and they had to click. If they don't click, it's absolutely useless to go ahead, because the transmission will not be effective. This might seem banal, but in Italy it had never been done. So it's a lesson that we learned after a couple of failures. Now I think we have surpassed the 200 young persons that we placed in Atelier, and 80% of them have been confirmed after the 6-month apprenticeship. This model included a very strong reflection on the educational systems. Which schools are we approaching? On the relationship with the bureaucracy. You can't really understand the meaning of the word bureaucracy until you come to Italy. Because here we have a thing or two to tell you about bureaucracy. So not every region, but every province in Italy has its own specific laws. So the rule that is applied in the province of Milan is not the rule that is applied in the province of Venice. In the Tuscany region, there is another way of doing it. In the Sicilian region, you have to present the candidates, and then at a certain moment, someone will maybe pick up the phone from the office and said, "Oh, what was your question again?" So, you know, how to say, it's not easy. And we pose ourselves the questions, are we working for whom? I mean, we had the feeling that we were working to ameliorate the position and the condition of these young artisans in order to offer them a position in the society. But if the public system seems to run against us, maybe there's something wrong, or maybe our approach was somehow mistaken, or so once more we understood the value of dialogue, like to breathe and try to explain and to express yourself with the public offices, saying we are not cheaters, we will not sell the organs of the apprentices on the black market. We want to offer them a future. We want to offer them money. We want to give a helping hand to the artisans. We are not aliens. We know that we are strange, but we are not aliens. Please, let's work together. So it's a model that, I don't know if it's innovative or not, but it's a model that has proved to be successful to bridge some know-hows into the future. Of course, I think the case of Italy is quite special, but not so special in the end, because I think that throughout Europe, we all face the challenge of bridging transmission and know-how into the future, and maybe I hope that after listening to our panelists and maybe to your questions, we can all, you know, leave the room with one idea or two about what can be done in our own countries and which are the best practices that we can share in order to see if there are weak points that maybe we can fix and we can solve. And I would start with Debbie, because I think that the example of the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust is quite special. First of all, because it comes from a very high and a royal, I would say, vision of the importance of crafts for the United Kingdom, because it's very effective, because it is sustained and not just in terms of money, but also in terms of acknowledgement. So, Debbie, would you like to describe us how the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust works and which results have been achieved so now, and maybe if there is one piece of advice or two that can be shared?
Thank you, Alberto. And I would just like to thank the Michelangelo Foundation for inviting us all. It has been the most inspiring 2 days, so thank you. And if I take anything away, it is that back in the United Kingdom, we need to work more closely. Organisations like the Heritage Craft Association, the Crafts Council, Crafts Scotland, City and Guilds, we need to work more closely together to achieve our aims. The Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust is not dissimilar to what Alberto has described. We are a charity which is funding the education and training of craftspeople. And we've been doing that for almost 30 years. And the Queen Elizabeth bit, in case any of you are wondering what that is, it was named after Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, so our present Queen's mother, in her 90th birthday year. We do what we set out to do 30 years ago, which is to ensure that craft skills are carried on by ensuring that craftspeople have the funding to do what their passion is in the pursuit of excellence. So since 1990, we have funded almost 500 scholarships in a huge range of different crafts, around 130 different craft skills. So everything from armory to ceramics to glass to leatherwork to rural crafts. We're very open in what we will fund. I think it's really important, and I was really interested in the previous panel's discussion about embracing technology and innovation into craft skills. I think for us, one of the things that we're most proud of is that 93% of the people that we've funded in those 30 years are still practicing their craft, that they're still commercially viable propositions, or they're teaching, they're passing on their skills to the next generation. I think that's really important. It's not actually about the number of people that we support or the money that we give away. We give away about £500,000 a year in scholarships, but it's about the sustainability of those craft skills, and that's, for me, one of the most important things. I think just touching on apprenticeships, I don't want this to become a sort of a political discussion, but apprenticeships in the United Kingdom are incredibly bureaucratic, perhaps not as bureaucratic as in Italy, but it's sort of impenetrable in order to understand how individual craftspeople and makers might be able to get funding to pursue their passion. And what we hope QEST does is to facilitate their pursuit of their skill without having to go to the government. Our system is such that you can't draw down government money unless there is an apprenticeship standard. It is very, very difficult to achieve an apprenticeship standard in many of the craft skills that we've been talking about. So we hope that we offer an innovative and alternative proposition to craftspeople. Not just young people. I think we talk a lot about young people and about passing on skills to the younger generation, but there are many other people who, for a whole range of different reasons, have had a change of career. So it's really important that we support them too.
So not taking someone else's place, but backing up, working side by side, and acting there where in the public system you see some, I don't want to say fails, but some difficulties, let's say, that would make apprentices even more difficult. So this is a very innovative way of approaching the field, and one of the reasons, maybe I think, of the success of what the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust does. Titus, in Germany, the situation seems to be quite different. We had the impression that apprenticeship in itself as an institution is not really something difficult. It's part of the educational system, it's part of the culture, yet at the same time, the transmission of know-how for future generations, it's something that touches and it's stretched throughout the countries and throughout the cultures. What the situation that your confederation is facing, and do you have any recipes or visions or ideas that we can share in terms of the skilled crafts, as the name of your confederation properly proposes?
Yeah, thank you, Alberto. Thank you for having me here. You may wonder why I wear this button here. This is crafts in Germany has a lot to do with identity, and this is the craft button of the crafts organization. Everybody wears it, and the craft organization is quite frightening for other people. But I brought it here to Italy to show it to you. We've got 53 chambers of crafts in Germany. We've got about the same size of central associations of crafts. Basically, this is a very powerful organization with a historical background after the turmoils of the beginning of the 19th century Napoleonic Wars and the introduction of the ideology of liberalism. The old guild system tended to be abolished all over Europe. But in the German states, then the craft guilds, which were fairly powerful in the cities and in the landscape, managed to build up a craft movement, a artisans movement, which was very important in 1848 revolution, and which was very successful at the end of the 19th century in collaborating with the imperial government of the Kaiserreich. And they managed at the very end of the 19th century to get a law passed, which is the German Craft Code. And on this craft code, everything is based in Germany now regarding craft and especially the chambers of crafts were introduced. Now, what we do in Germany now is a dual education. Apprenticeship is involved, and it's basically the backbone of the German economy, still regarded as well for industry. In the craft sector, we've got we do about 25 to 30% of the overall vocational education and training. We cannot keep all of our apprentices. Most of them go to the industry because they pay better, but we do the education in the businesses. So this vocational education and training system in Germany is quite a record. It's very successful. Why is it successful? Because of tacit knowledge. You can't play the piano by theory. You have to practice, 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 practice. And that's the same thing in crafts. You have to practice from day one. And you become a master. That's the way I quite like the idea of the model. You always have this model of the master in your head because the master is the one who teaches you. So it's a very sustainable way of transmission. Now, coming to your question, what is the situation now? Of course, we have a little bit of deterioration. We have a demographic change. We fare fairly well with this. We stopped the curve, which was declining. We are still having enough apprentices for our open posts, so that works out well. We had the odd reform, which weren't so nice in the beginning of the 2000s, especially as far as artistic crafts are concerned, and cultural and creative crafts, which are about 70 different professions in Germany. 21%.
Acknowledged by the code that you were mentioning before, yes. The 70.
Yeah, yeah, this has to do with the role of the master. In a certain amount of professions, you have to be a master craftsman to be able to set up your business. Now, in most of the artistic crafts, which are about 51, you don't need to have that, which led to a deterioration, A, of the quality of teaching, and B, to the quantity of teaching as well, because if you don't have master craftsmen as teachers in your businesses, then off it goes. But this is not a problem. Actually, we don't have a problematic situation now in Germany, so actually we're doing quite fine. But what we need is communication into society, because we still have to struggle. Despite all what I've been saying, despite all our economic foothold we have in Germany, despite all that, craftspeople are still considered as kind of second-rate, yeah? It is not as nice as to be an academic person if you're a craftsperson. And it's, the title of Master Craftsman is not as acknowledged as, for instance, an MA title or a professor. So everybody still has, most of the people still have in their mind, yo, I go for a university career, after A-levels, I go to university and then I study, and then what? Yeah, we can offer very good careers in the crafts. People get paid from day one of their apprenticeship, approximately 600 euros. Yeah, and they have a kind of insurance. Yeah, they got a job insured after their apprenticeship. But despite all these economic positive factors, we still have an ideology problem. Yeah? And this is where our needs are. We need communication, and we need identity in the crafts.
So in a place like Germany, where really education is at the backbone of the success of this economic model, and where education has still sustained, in a way, the presence and the work of the master craftsman, nevertheless, despite, you know, the apparently easier access of the apprentices in the market, certainly easier than in Italy or in the UK, but nevertheless, rightly, Titus was insisting on this fact of communicating properly all the occasions that can unfold in front of a young, talented person thanks to the craft. So even when the system seems to be flowing flawlessly, but nevertheless our attention has to be put on how we present these careers and on how they are perceived. So once again, thank you, Titus, because this is connected to what we were saying in the previous panel. So the acknowledgement of what excellence is and how this polarizes, in a way, public opinion. Richard, I deeply regret not accepting your invitation to come to Latvia for your summer school, because I'm sure it would have been a fabulous moment for me. I do hope to be invited again next year, but you know, we were working for you to build this. But this model that you are proposing in the summer school is quite innovative. Is it something that is really fertilizing the connection between arts, crafts, design in your country? Is it well perceived? Do the craftsmen from your country react positively to this? I mean, which kind of expectation you had, and how successful is this model turning out to be?
First, yes, thank you that you invite me here. And actually, the school was only third year, and first 2 years was like experiment. So, and actually, it's not so innovative model. I was totally inspired by the Black Mountain College, and I decided to make something similar in my country. And a very important thing is that the municipality, we organize this a school in small city. It's about 20,000 people live here, but it's very impressive and very nice nature. And also the nature environment is very important, I think, for the teaching the crafts and teaching the art and teaching also a lot of kind of like innovative things. The environment plays very big role in this in creating of the school. And also very important was that the municipality sees the benefits which they get from the I will say the crew of 50 crazy people who come over the whole world and work together with local craftsmen. And it was like first 2 years was quite difficult because first we made a very careful mapping of the region. We talked with about the 30 craftsmen, and for each craftsman we need to find specific language because it's impossible to explain these processes which I would like to implement in this area. And I select the 10 most mighty, and also there is a lot of difference between the craftsmen. Some of craftsmen are more focused only on making the money, so I'm not interested in this kind of craftsmen. And some craftsmen are the same like Rihards, which actually made the revolution for the design. He was a craftsman, he made the chair from the leftovers, and he's always interested in making something more, not to make the replicas of some existing samples. So I invite. It was like actually making of the. It's actually as getting married. So you need to keep these relationships very carefully because these people are they actually are very selfish and they're not really interested in sharing with someone this knowledge. They are making their stuffs. They know how to do it, and to make all the changes in the rules of traditional crafts, we need to understand that it's as for us to make something different in design if we don't like the modern art, so it's not acceptable for us. So it's very difficult to go against the rules, against the tradition of craft. They feel that they are making something wrong. So that's not allowed in these guilds and things like that, and you need to be very artisan craftsman to do these changes and things like that. So, yes, and we, as a result, we have in the third year, we have quite big competition and for students who apply to the school, and we have the students from the best European school like Central St. Martin College and Design Academy Eindhoven. And actually, I can say that I see that actually there is a lot of the people who are studying design in good schools like Eindhoven, so they are at the beginning of their ways, and they could be designers who work in the factories, but a lot of them establish their own studios where they work actually as a craftsmen. So they also produce these things in the way as craftsmen doing, and then also mix this crafting stuff with the technologies. So in the same time, they use a 3D printer in the studio, and in the same time they have the rounding wheels and then potteries and things like that. So I don't see the problems that it's like separated worlds. And also the same in the contemporary art. I also invite the tutors who are contemporary artists because I see that they work as designers, as craftsmen, where the common thing is that they work with material, and the treating of material is the main thing for the education. And I see the craftsman, it's more like science. And it's science about the material, about the things, how the world is built. Because it's the way how we can know more about the world, about how the things is built, how the materials, where we get the materials, how we are treating materials. And it's like very important, I would like to say it's science. And that's for me that craftsmen people are very, we need to save them, we need to work with them because they give us unique knowledge about us, about ourselves, and about how the actually world is made.
So your challenge has been a multifaceted one. First of all, you had to find the right artisans and convince them to take part in the project. Then you had to attract the best talents from international schools to invite them to be collaborative and also to change once again the mindset, maybe going a little bit against the rules, but to create new possibilities. Has this, at the third year, proved to be a successful? I mean,
yes,
will
actually,
there be a
I see
year?
that the manifesto for our school, it's made very well, and we receive very big and very carefully written motivation letters, and I see that young generation students, there's plenty of students which are very interested in all the crafts which we offer to them. And also we select the designers and artists which are trendy, which is like Ossenos Design Studio from Netherlands and the Mang and Soderstrom, and as they are working with the New York Times, Adidas, and companies like this, so students can get very close to the professionals, and also these all tutors and professionals are very interested to work with the new crafts, because we're trying to every year get some new unique crafts like wood, bark workshops, and next year we will have the workshop with artisan who is also represented in the exhibition. He works with the peat.
Okay,
and he
so
works with hands, and he
right.
gets his own techniques.
So it's a very interesting model that aims at giving shape to a collaboration. So not only shaping new crafts, but shaping new figures that could work with craftsmen. And Agatha, in Switzerland, I would say that there again, if I can make a comparison with another virtuoso model like Germany, apprenticeships are quite well regulated. It's part of the national culture. Being that a federal state, it's a real federal state, so it's not a chaotic, fake federal state like Italy, but it's a real federal state where nevertheless the approach of the young generations to the world of job and employment is regulated in order to facilitate that. But at the same time, though, while Switzerland is home to world-acknowledged schools of design and architectures, and in terms of the arts and the crafts, what is the situation like? What is the situation that you are facing? Are crafts still a choice that the young generations do with joy, with conviction, or is there something else that has to be done in order to even ameliorate this virtuoso model?
So actually, I did ask Saturday my students, because I had lessons, so I think I thought I will ask them. And first of all, they formulate their frustration, as we heard already before, that the value in the society is so low for learning a craft. Still, they did it, but still they are suffering by this value. And just during the discussion, they start to find back to their proudness, and they made like slogans. Some of the topics you mentioned already, Titus, so that they said, I mean, they are very young when they make the decision, shall I go to university career or shall I go to learn a profession? And then there is the challenge or the decision, shall I go to administration, so sitting in an office, or physical works? But as you say, if somebody can go to university career, so you just have to do it because you will earn some time to do the final decision what kind of profession you have. But now they made like slogans to, they said, learn a trade, you will, I have to translate, learn a trade, you will receive some time and earn money meanwhile, and you will get to a level which you can, from where you can do everything you want. And learn a trade, train your brain and your body, and well, as we said, earn money meanwhile. And in the end, they said, learn a trade, learn a craft, and maybe you will be designer afterwards, or you will come a bit designer. So, but it's also real the problem that that they need an identification person, as we said before, but how the young people find those persons, because they are not already in that interest that they go to exhibitions maybe like this. They are in a normal school, and then sometimes they have organized fairs for professional finding. And so a cabinet maker told me that at the stand from the cabinet maker, you could do something by your own, but it was a measure stick. And he said, how boring is that? I mean, you should show there, maybe not already like going to design or to art, because it's like too far away for a lot of them, but to show like a creative potential in the craft.
I think that all the words that we have been listening to are already kind of eye-opening, because even in virtuoso models like the ones we're facing, there is a very common trait that is coming out. So when we tell our young boys and our young girls, hey, if you become an artisan, you are going to find employment, because for sure someone will hire you. You will be paid like 600, 700 euro per month, while so many like young lawyers, they will never get paid until they are 45, blah, blah. And nevertheless, they don't click to that. It seems like we cannot charm them with this, while we charm them when we show them the beautiful things and the acknowledgement and the happiness that comes from doing. You know, like in Italy, St. Francis used to preach, fare bene per stare bene. You are happy if you do well. This is a secret of well-being. It's not a retirement fund. So maybe what we should try to include in our model for transmission to make it efficient is not promising happiness, nobody can, but maybe promising them fulfillment and visibility and maybe a different social status. No, Debbie, what do you think about it? And what is the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust trying to do for this, being the quest so close to the royal household also?
I think we first of all got to show our young people that craft is a possibility, that it actually exists. We, QEST, work with another charity called Education Employers, which is about industry going into schools to talk about the world of work and raising the aspirations and horizons of young people. And part of that is taking our craftspeople and our artisans into the schools to say, this is a possibility. Many, many young people don't even know that some of these things actually exist. I have an example. We've done lots and lots of these visits to schools, and we often take our shoemaker, our cordwainer, into the schools. And she is always the absolute star of the show, because many of the young people don't even know that shoes are made. They don't understand that concept. And of course, you know, that goes right across the board. So before we can even inspire and say, this could be the most amazing career, we've got to show them that it's actually a possibility. And this is a challenge. You know, in the UK, you know, it's all about going to university. It's all about, I sound like a really political animal. I'm not, but it's all about, you know, tick boxing. You must go to university, and the creative industries, art and craft in schools is very, very poorly funded. But we must open our eyes to our young people so that they can become. It's amazing the amount of young people I meet who say they want to be a sculptor, they want to be jewelers. The schools say, well, of course, that isn't a possibility. It is a possibility, and we've got to do more. All of our organizations is talking with our education system. And I would just say that the Heritage Craft Association have in fact just set up an all-party parliamentary group within the UK Parliament about craft for the first time, which I think is really, really important step in elevating that whole debate around education also.
And Titus, about the experience in Germany, I mean, is your model kind of sustained and understood by the political side of this? Because, I mean, I appreciate it's something that has really been sustaining the German growth throughout the decades, its attention to education and to a specific training also for the young generations. But is it something that is appreciated and understood on a political level, or do you always have to underline the importance of this? I mean, which is the battle that you have to fight now to make sure that transmission is not only successful but also effective, and that it can last for the years to come?
Well, this is what I'm paid for, actually, and I have to do my job. Yeah, I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have this luxury of a federal organization lobbying with the federal government to always be there and raise awareness of politicians and other other stakeholders who partake in decision making of the importance of the craft trades. I think there are two very important factors. There's one, what we've been discussing already is what is the prestige, social prestige of a craftsman. And yes, we have a real problem there. Even my colleagues who are in education and training say Erasmus Plus is okay. It is not, because it doesn't pay course fees. It's a detail, a tiny little detail, but this tiny little detail is an obstacle for your cross-border education mobilization for craftspeople. So what does it mean in the end? Craftspeople stay at home. They don't learn foreign languages. They have a decreased building prestige, education prestige, and this is fatal. Yeah, you don't get a wife, basically, or a husband, because you're considered, basically second best. So this is an important factor which we have to tackle. I think politicians don't do that on purpose. This is just working on details. But we have to communicate this. We have to communicate that craftspeople need to have a European education perspective. As Erasmus did for all the academics, that is taken for granted, but it did not happen for craftspeople. Yeah? This year, Cultural Heritage Year, European culture, you may have heard of it, was taken as an occasion for our federal education ministry to get rid of a stipend which was meant for craftspeople to come to Italy and to learn restoration techniques in Italy, which was there since the 1970s. So this was killed this year. It wasn't done on purpose. It was done out of basically negligence. Education perspective is one thing, but then if we want to, we always have to ask ourselves, what do we want? What do we want with this education, with this fine education? And then we have to look at the market. Yeah, we need to have a broad market. Otherwise, no politician will say we throw money after this. So we always have to bear in mind what market will that be. Will it be a luxury market? Will it be sort of high-level expertise of craftspeople? There can be a market, yeah. Take, for instance, German organ makers. There are like 400 enterprises in Germany, but they do very, very well because they're there on an international level. So really good, small, tiny trade, but faring very well. In a sort of high-end niche, if you want. Or take, at the other end, take construction industry. You need good expertise there as well, yeah, to have decent construction done. So you need to have a look at the market. What do we want with the education? And there comes in the education system, which is sustainable in Germany because it's the associations who define what will be taught in the apprenticeship and later on in the master craftsman classrooms. So, and if we define our market specifically there, then we can have more traditional skills or less traditional skills. So that is very important. And the last thing I want to say, we are the parent or grandparent generation here in this room. My son is a digital native. Okay, he hates crafts because of me, but it's a different matter. How can we, and this is a very important question, how can we lure digital natives to something as brick and mortar as crafts?
This is a very important question, and I think at HomoFaber we have also tried to give a reply to this by inviting really the young generation to experience once again the real thing, like inviting. But anyway, your point, Titus, was super interesting because it underlines the importance of a system, like of an integrated system, and not just from a local point of view, but from an international point of view. I mean, we all know the violins from Cremona and the Stradivari, but not so many people know that actually it was the German violin makers from Füssen that were forced to leave their village because of the Wanderschaft, so they had to move from Füssen somewhere else to spend 1 year abroad. Very often they crossed the Alps, they came down to Cremona, the climate was mild, the girls were pretty, so they just stayed there, and they fertilized the violin-making world up to arriving to Amati, Stradivari, and so on. The circulation of talents, also from a crafts point of view, is something super important. Richard, I mean, you have been a kind of a pioneer of this internationalization of connection between design and local craftsmen. Do you think that this can help putting, again, like your country and your local craftsmen on the radar of international designers, like that you're breaking new ground to invite new generation of designers to come and experiment what can be done there? And it's something that the artisans you work with are ready to embrace, or every year the fight is to start again from scratch?
Yes, until now it works very well, and it's. I'm sure that it will work. Also, it will continue, and we will develop some new programs and new issues. And now we are working on the. We are on the way to make the college in the future in the Nordic region, where will be this kind of teaching where is a lot of the work by hand and with the craftsmen and materials done. And yes, it takes time, but all the craftsmen also are getting more involved in these processes, and they're spreading these things what's happening in the school around, and the people are scared about the things which they didn't know anything about that. So after some 2 years, they feel more sure about them, and they are more open also for the students, and more are getting in the actions. And we are in the same time we also involve and engage the local biofarmers and biofarms. So when we together with craftsmen and designers, and we are finding solutions for the nutrition problems and the food growing problems and permaculture. And actually the brief is like very progressive, very innovative, but we all work in the framework framework of craft and technology and material. And it is very important also for the creative education. So you need to make real objects in real space, in real time, and you need to make, from your concepts, you need to make real exhibition. After these 10 days, we have wonderful exhibition of real made objects. It's not like in artisan quality, but it's in very high quality objects. And actually, in a lot of the schools, it will take the half of year to make this kind of project with concept, with realized object. And the main benefit for the students is that they understand actually how much they can make and achieve with their hands. Because in the first days, they don't believe that it's possible to make real projects, real objects, and these objects can be used and tested in the same time at the opening of the exhibition.
And it's a very interesting and pioneering experience, which is really breaking new ground in this term. Agatha, let's say you are given from the federal government in Bern magic powers. Okay, you can do what you want to make transmission in Switzerland working better, being more effective, and really acting and doing and insisting to make sure that your wishes come true. What would be the first actions that actually you would do? Because here, what we are talking about are, in my opinion, super interesting, because we are not saying we don't have to take someone else's place, we have to facilitate, we have to invent, we have to mediate, we have to make sure our issues are not forgotten, we have to communicate. And this, in my opinion, is the role of so many non-governmental entities, as many of us are. But like, from your point of view, saying that these wishes could come true, which are the most urgent issues that should be done in a country like Switzerland, where basically unemployment is non-existing or almost, where the level of welfare is very high, but where nevertheless young generations want to dream, want to achieve fulfillment, want to be regarded not as be serious, like as Titus was saying, oh, you are an artisan, poor thing, but as persons whose talent will bring them to success. So
it's a nice idea to have money like that, but I think I would invite all children to come to the school, to our school, and to be able just to create something so that they learn what you said, how you said it, you are happy or you are...
Yes,
how
you
is
are
it?
happy if you do well.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Well if you do well.
Exactly, so to get this experience. And I think that would need a lot of money.
Yes, of course, this would require a lot of money, but also a lot of patience and passion and competence.
And for that, actually, I would need a lot of craftsmanship to show to these young people and to be an idol for them and to give this contact. And there we try to fill a gap between craftsmen, just as you said, just fulfilling, just producing, and craftsmen understanding, designing idea, so that they can be like the link from designer to producer, or then go further on to create ideas themselves.
So I think that, Barbara, now you want maybe to ask if there are questions or any way to conclude. If I may, like what I really found inspiring in our conversation, and thank you very much for your time, is that, I mean, we have been talking about mediation, we have been talking about showing the real thing, we have been talking about inventing and putting together, we have been talking about proposing a model and communicating. We are talking about human factors. Again, the human is at the center. No real model can be achieved or can be effective without a personal commitment of all of the protagonists to put all of their humanity in this process. And I think this is something, on the one side, scary, because, I mean, we always have to look for passionate human beings like you are to make sure this is effective. but also beautiful, because this means we still have a role in changing our society for the better for the new generations. Barbara.
Yes.
We also have our hostesses with our microphones. And
yeah, thank you very much for taking me here. My name is Olivier Mellerio. I am from France. And as a former chairman of Comité Colbert, which is the association of the luxury brands in France, I have seen the emergence of what we have called the luxury industry, which has been extremely successful, as you all know. And at the same time, this word luxury, we have been fighting with it. Should we keep it with its ambiguous role? Now, what I have seen also is the rising gap between the luxury and the craftsmanship. In other words, there was some frustration from the craftsmen to see the success of what they despised in a way as the kind of going into the mass production. And obviously, if you go international, if you develop lots of shops and so on all over the world, you know, it's a different game. You go from the individual, from the artisan, to the brand, which is a different picture. Now, what I see now that these luxury brands, they go to art. They are very interested in promoting the creators within the luxury brands. So there is, what is it for the craftsmen? Those who work with their hands, which after all is something very, very, as you say, very, very worth promoting. And this is really the question is, how do we actually design the economic model so that the artisan who is working with his hands, as my grandfather used to do, and how can he work, can he live well? The level of living. You have to have clients who are mécènes, you know, patrons, and who favor and who like, because the craftsman, first of all, he wants to be independent. He doesn't want to, you know, and within all those big money, it's very difficult to have a decent level of living, especially if you have to work and to learn and to for years and years. You have to be 10 years to make an artisan. How do you live during that period?
Thank you for this remark. Certainly, fine craftsmanship is very much connected to the creation of excellent product or even luxury product. And the room, which is just here, Discovery and Rediscovery, is all about that, with these 20 maisons, very well known or lesser known, that showcase their real artisanal roots. What we have seen from our perspective is that actually more and more brands more and more maisons have understood the importance of education in craft. Very simply, because I mean, if you sell beautiful watches and you have no more enamelers or watchmakers, you don't have your core business anymore, you don't have profits, you don't have anything more. So, and this is true also for leather good companies. Many fashion brands are creating their own academies, not for designers, but for tailors, shoemakers, bag makers. Is this only marketing? Is this survivor? Time will tell. But what we are witnessing is anyway a certain change in the perspective. Maybe not from a marketing point of view, because to say that a very important brand sustains a very important artist, wow, it fulfills everybody's cups with champagne. And as you know, champagne is the best friend of art. But nevertheless, we do believe that something is changing, and thanks to the acknowledgement of the importance of crafts in luxury industry and in the production of excellent goods, we do think that something is changing also in terms of investments in the education of young generation, hopefully.
And I would just add one thing to that, which is that both of our founders, Mr. Rupert and Mr. Coligny, feel very strongly that the luxury goods industry in general has a very important role to play in sustaining and fulfilling craftsmanship. That's one of the reasons that they created the Michelangelo Foundation, and it's one of the reasons why the Michelangelo Foundation is distinctly collaborative. So.
There was a question here.
Sí. I am Jesus Angel Prieto, Massana School of Barcelona, and I have my colleague Laura Miquel de Funts Art de Barcelona, who helped me with the English translation. Please, Laura. Creo que hay un problema básico, que todos estaremos de acuerdo, con el reconocimiento de los oficios de arte y de la artesanía.
I think there is a problem with the recognition of the crafts and trades.
Yo he estado trabajando en una investigación académica sobre los mecanismos del reconocimiento en los oficios y llegué a alguna conclusión.
He has been working on the recognition of crafts in an academic point of view.
Y una de las ideas es la dificultad de transmitir a los jóvenes el modo de vida de la artesanía.
And one of the main issues is how to transmit to the young people the way of living of a craftsman.
No es que sean nativos digitales, nosotros también estamos siendo nativos digitales por obligación. Es que han nacido en un mundo donde la publicidad marca claramente su manera de actuar.
They are no digital natives, we are also, but the issue is about advertisement and communication. That marketing and advertising is telling them how to be.
Los jóvenes ven en la publicidad dos principales maneras de actuar.
Young people see in advertisement two ways of acting.
La importancia del yo. Yo soy el centro del mundo.
The importance of me. I'm in the middle of the world.
Y yo lo quiero todo ya.
And I want everything now.
Si miran los anuncios verán que todos acuden al yo y al ya.
In advertisement, they always talk about me and now.
Y todo bajo el paraguas del low cost.
And everything is under the umbrella of low cost.
¿Cómo a un joven le digo que ha de comprar madera para hacer un violín dentro de 30 años?
How can I tell a young person that he has to buy wood for making a violin in 30 years?
Hay una enorme contradicción en nuestra educación como padres, que les damos todo y ya, con la mentalidad del oficio.
There is a contradiction in how we are parenting now, and what was it? Yeah, and that they want everything now, and the way of thinking in crafts.
Nosotros estamos haciendo un muy modesto posgrado en artes aplicadas, donde por fin vemos a aquella gente ya adulta que entiende este modo de hacer.
The Escola Massana is doing now a postgraduate program in crafts, in applied art, sorry, and they are seeing that adults, not so young anymore, that they are getting this idea now.
Con los jóvenes de entrada creo que es todavía muy difícil, y el cambio de ser de la educación en las familias y contrarrestar la enorme presión del consumismo de los medios de comunicación.
This is very difficult now with young people, and to cope with the pressure that is coming from the media.
Por eso creo que la artesanía es el futuro, porque es un cambio de mentalidad contra la sociedad consumista.
So that's why I think that crafts is the answer and the future to this against what? Against the consumism.
Recordar, en Barcelona, no sé si lo ha dicho en otros sitios, Richard Sennett dijo que la artesanía era el único modo de acabar con el capitalismo.
Richard Sennett said in Barcelona that crafts is the only way to abolish capitalism.
Yo no sé si puedo asumir tal reto.
He doesn't know if he can answer that, assume that challenge.
But thank you. It's a very important remark, this, Professor, so thank you very much for pointing it out. And I think that all of you that are involved, either in education or in transmission or in helping a new generation, are facing this challenge, like with the young generation that says, I want everything, I want now, I want to be at the center, I want... Actually, if I may, all the teenagers throughout the history of the world have always felt this. But now I would say that maybe this point of view is not just for the teenagers, but it's a state of mind that goes against the culture of craft. I mean, where you don't become a master in one day, where you have to practice and practice and practice, and where your teachers must also be there, not to demotivate you, but to cultivate your talent with a lot of also like tough learnings. Yes, it is a great challenge that has to be faced. It's a change of mind, but I think that both Titus pointed out this very well, and Agatha too. I mean, it's once again, it's a matter of education and of changing the mindset. But again, if I may, this idea of developing again a new culture of living through craft is extremely contemporary. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if you wanted to relaunch a city, you would call a great architect and ask him to create a museum of contemporary art. Now you invite artisans, craftsmen, creative people to open their own atelier. The rebirth of cities passed through crafts, through job, through employment, through a different approach to this. And we do hope that this is not just ephemeral.
Thank you so much, Alberto. Thank you to all of our panelists. I will only take 2 minutes to sort of summarize the things that came out of this very rich discussion. One of them is that the status, the societal status of people young people who are choosing the applied arts and crafts as their field of study is still very much in danger. They are considered second-class citizens, even in countries that have very excellent apprenticeship programs. That's a bit is a surprise, I think, in some ways. The other thing that's really, I think, critical is that we cannot really speak about education without speaking about the economy and how this vital link is something that, so we cannot work on one thing at a time. We have to work on things simultaneously and together. And finally, and that's something that will leads us beautifully into our discussion when we come back from lunch, which is centered around communication, that the importance of communication is vital for education, for transmission, and without it, we really can't do anything. So with that, I will invite everybody to step outside, take a break, continue discussing, enjoy lunch, and come back in an hour to speak about different modes of communication. Thank you very much.